Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Miranda for those of you who are new here, and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. I am looking to take you on a journey today into the lands mystical and into Avalon. For this week's Fairy Friday video, I have decided to do a video on the Morrigan, who is a great fairy queen. And she is the triple goddess and fairy queen of Ireland, known as a war goddess. She's a very fierce and fiery deity. She is incredibly associated with this dangerous connotation. And yeah, she does have that dangerous feeling because she is associated with war and death. And I'll get into two of her myths that do associate her as a war goddess. But I'm also going to look at her different faces, her different aspects, her different reflexes that are found throughout the Celtic world. She, in some ways, can be seen as being all the fairy queens in one, and I think it's super fascinating. And she even has a very controversial link to my favorite fairy queen of all time, Morrigan Le Fay, who I do lots of content on. So let's get into the Morrigan. So, as I mentioned, she is a triple goddess, and she's a goddess of war, but also of witchcraft and prophecy, which further has that Morrigan Le Fay link. But I do want to say that the reason a lot of scholars and pagans are against this claim that the Morrigan could have evolved into Morrigan Le Fay is because many people who support this theory do it firstly based on the names sounding similar. The similar sounding of their names does not link them. Okay? The similar sounding of their names is just that they sound similar. But the Morrigan's name is Irish, so it's derived from the Irish, and it means phantom queen or great queen. And Morrigan Le Fay's name, Morrigan, is Welsh, meaning seaborn. So there's a difference there. The Morrigan is a great queen and a phantom queen, but Morrigan Le Fay is also a Greek queen and a phantom queen. The Morrigan does have a link in her tales with water, especially in the first tale I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk about it right now. The tale of her and the Dagda. Now, it is said that before a great battle, the Dagda and the Morrigan had sex literally over a river. She was at the river in her banshee kind of washerwoman aspect, and he and the Morrigan had sex. And this is how she blessed his battle. She does have a lot of sexual connotations. She's incredibly sexual. And a lot of how she does tend to want to bless her warriors is in this sexuality aspect. She's a fairy queen. Fairy queens are pretty much all intimately linked with sex, because in the world of fairy, sex isn't dirty. It's this beautiful thing, and it's natural. Fairies love sex just like humans do, and they just have a healthier way of conceptualizing sex in their world. So that links her with the water, and the washer at the ford aspect that is related to banshees links her with water. The Morrigan is, beyond all these other things, queen of the banshees. She is the queen of the banshees. And I did talk about banshees in my last video because I compared Melusine with banshees. So I did talk about them. They are wailing women. They are these screaming banshees who are fairies that are said to be able to detect death and also predict it. And it is linked with the washer at the ford in Celtic lore, who are washerwomen that if a warrior going into battle saw this washerwoman washing out his own bloodied armor and battle garments, he knew he wouldn't survive that battle. So it's a visual symbology for the washer at the ford, whereas the banshee, it's this very visceral screaming sounds that you hear. So, very interesting right there. Now, I do want to talk about how, besides being a triple goddess, the Morrigan is a ninefold goddess. And there's an interesting essay in this book by Blood, Bone, and by Blood, Bone, and Blade, a tribute to the Morrigan. It's produced by Bibliotheca Alexandrina, and that's a great pagan resource. And in this, let's see, what's the title of here we go. It is 9 Times Eternal, The Ongoing Transformations of the Great Queen by L. Sixfingers. And in this, the author of this particular essay, because this is a tribute, so it has a lot of different devotional collections within it, and this person breaks apart the Morrigan into 9 faces as opposed to just 3. And 9s and 3s are very, very important in Celtic lore. We see it all through Celtic lore. So, she has as guardian, Banba as advocate, Danu as activist, Fadla as intermediary, Bath as warrior, Macha as seer, Nemain as crisis, Fia as healer, Morgan Le Fay, and as the weaver, the Morrigan herself. And I think that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I like the breaking it up into different specific archetypal reasons we're seeing her in this way at this time. And I think it could be applied to how you celebrate this goddess throughout the Wheel of the Year as well. I think it's very well done. So, we have that. But that ninefold aspect also does link her to the Avalonian aspect. Morgan Le Fay, when we first meet her, literarily speaking, in literature, she is Geoffrey of Monmouth's Morgan the Goddess of Avalon, who Merlin brings Arthur to in Vita Merlini when Arthur is dying of his wounds after the final battle at Camlan. And as Morgan sees him, she's beginning to heal him. But it does say Morgan is one of 9 sisters. She is the leader and foremost sister. She's brilliant and the one who is best at herbcraft, the one who is best at transformational magic. And she's said to fly on strange wings like Daedalus. And it's this really beautiful passage. It's really a long paragraph. That's all that we get. But it so perfectly evokes Morgan as the goddess of Avalon that it's how most of us who have read the Vita Merlini first associate with her. Like, this is beautiful when you trace her literary heritage, and this is the first reference. It's a very powerful one. And if we think of the Morrigan having a ninefold aspect and Morgan having that ninefold sisterhood of Avalon, it does link that Avalonian connection, as well as Avalon being a fairyland. The Morrigan's a fairy queen. She's probably a member of the Tuatha De Danann, who are the Irish fairy kings and queens, the gods who were forced into the hills, which is why they're called She, the people of the fairy mounds as well, after losing a war with these human settlers. But then the humans would go on to worship them as gods and as the fae folk. So it's very, very interesting to see this great respect shown by these people who really triumphed over you. But only in the human world. Fairyland still existed, and they were even more powerful in Fairyland. This was just their foothold in the human world that they didn't really necessarily need, so they just retreated and stayed in the Fairylands, which was pretty badass and powerful in and of its own right. More so than the human lands. Okay, so I've covered quite a bit already. Take a breath, and we're going to move on to the most famous story of the Morrigan, which is the Cuchulainn story. Cuchulainn is a great hero of Irish tradition. He is the most prominent hero in the Ulster cycle, which I did talk about in my Maeve video, because Maeve herself is associated in the Ulster cycle. And Cuchulainn is a warrior of Ulster that the Morrigan had planned to bless in battle and had originally said, yeah, you're going to win. But when she came to him and said, okay, yeah, I'm gonna bless you for this battle. You're gonna have sex with me. He rejected her. You rejected a goddess's advances. This is stupid. And it proves to be the most stupid thing he could have done, as his rejection does injure her, but she tricks him into healing her, number one, from these, injuries that he inflicted upon her. And secondly, she is a goddess. She is a goddess of war. She literally determines who wins and who loses, who lives and who dies. So, yeah, she made sure he died. Not only did they lose the battle, she made sure he died. And then she turned into her crow form and just sat on his shoulder. The shoulder of his dead body on the battlefield. So yeah, again, don't fuck with the Morrigan. Just don't. So, that is the downfall of Cuchulainn, obviously. And then I want to briefly talk about the Morrigan and some of her other aspects a little bit. She is sometimes linked with Rhiannon because of her aspect as Macha or Maka, because Macha or Maka is represented as a red mare a lot of times, or as a mare, and so is Rhiannon, of course, that horse and sovereignty goddess aspect. But Maka is a lot more dark, so to speak. She's more of a dark goddess, but you still have that intrinsic link. I did mention in my Anya and Maeve videos that some people do link both of them as being parts of the Morrigan. And Madryn, or Madryn, is the Welsh mother goddess, often said to be directly linked with Morgan Le Fay, and she is also a figure linked with the Morrigan, because the Morrigan and Madryn are thought to be kind of the same goddess in different lands. And then, of course, Madryn would go on to become Morgan Le Fay in the Arthurian legends, down to the fact that we know that in earlier tales we had Madryn as the wife of King Uriens and the mother of Owain or Yvain, who is then said to be Morgan Le Fay in the Arthurian legends. Direct connection there. And finally, talked about her connection to banshees. The Morrigan can also be connected to Valkyries. A lot of what I've talked about in her battle aspects, this warlike aspect, is this chooser of the slain and chooser of who wins, who loses, and who deserves to be remembered. And this is very similar to the Norse concept of Valkyries. A lot of people have talked about this. I'm not the first one to see this connection, but certainly it makes sense. And the last thing I want to leave you with is the Morrigan is a psychopomp. She is someone who brings people from one plane of existence into the next, from life into death, because she's a death goddess. And certainly Morgan Le Fay is thought of as this kind of midwife of death, like helping you in your dying time. Whether it's actual physical death or not, we see it with physical death in Arthur. So whether you feel that the Morrigan and Morgan Le Fay could be the same or not, or that the Morrigan could be any of these other figures or not, the connections and the similarities can't be ignored. So I want to wish everyone a very happy Faery Friday. I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And please like, subscribe, comment, and pop over to my blog, whiteroseofavalon.life, if you want more of my content. I truly appreciate everything. I love the support. So have a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye now.